So I've just left the gym, so I look a little bit a mess. But anyway, I wanted to make a video because I was having a conversation with a few of my friends recently about like the aftermath of pregnancy and how it affects your periods and what's happening. And I've always been that girl who has the worst periods ever. I've never had the pain really, but I've always had, they're just heavy, they overflow. And before I had my son, I remember my periods lasting like 3 weeks on, 2 weeks off, 7 days off, 2 weeks on, and it would come whenever it wanted to come. And I wasn't trying to go on any sort of contraceptive pill or anything because I was trying to have my son, but I had to go through the motions of what's happening. I had a biopsy. They're like, oh, everything looks normal. Why are you guys putting me through this? Because you guys know why I'm going through all of this bleeding. You guys know that there is a hormonal issue. You guys are saying, oh, well, we don't even think it's PCOS. Well, what is it? No one's actually investigating the what's, the where's, the whys. So the run up to being pregnant was really really long for me and my partner because of that. But I got into holistic healing and I was taking lots of supplements and herbs. I was going to the gym, I was working out, and then I got pregnant. So I was really happy that it eventually happened when it was supposed to happen. And then my period stopped, obviously, for that whole 9-month cycle, 9 months of growing a human, right? And then I gave birth in April of 2022. And that after birth, that all comes out, that was fine. I had no issues with that. I think maybe a week after, less than a week even, it was all gone, all finished. And then I didn't actually get a period until about 3 to 4 weeks after that. The first period was really weird because it was like there's still like, it was just weird. But that period was fine. And then I had another period after that, the following month, right? But my periods were lasting about 7 days. And it wasn't the heaviest, but it was still slightly heavy. And then, bearing in mind, I was breastfeeding. So I was breastfeeding for a couple of months, up until 5 months. Let me tell you, when I stopped breastfeeding, my periods went back to how they were prior to having my son. I was bleeding so heavy, it was awful, like constantly bleeding, being tired, clots, it was hemorrhaging, like it was so bad. And I remember I called my GP and I was like, look, help me out, man. And they're like, oh, do you want to go on the Mirena pill? And I was like, you know what, I've just had a baby, I don't want to go on anything anyway, but I need to stop this. And even like sat here, I'm getting like the shivers because that's what you feel when you're bleeding so much, is you always have that cold feeling. And I spoke to the doctor who was going to give me the Mirena pill, and she's very known in what she does. She just puts the Mirena pill, the Mirena coil. Oh my God, the Mirena coil. She's known for inserting that. So I was talking to her and she was like, I goes, why do you think like my periods are like this? And she's like, well, it's hormones, honey. And she's like, everything that we are consuming in today's society is affecting us. Like the first doctor ever to say to me, it's in the water. She was like, you might be thinking you're doing justice by drinking water bottles, whatever. She's like, well, actually, it's also in the water as well. So everyone that you know has jacked up hormones, whatever your gender is, hormones are likely to be jacked up with something somewhere. So I went away and I thought about that and I was like, nah, I'm not going outside like that. I'm not going to go on the Mirena coil. I don't want a coil. I do want to have kids after this. I don't want to have this coil put in and mess up my hormones even more, right? So I cancelled my appointment to have it put in, and then I think a few months had passed and then my periods started to regulate on their own. I have never in my life had a 5-day cycle, 5 days, 4 days, it literally just depends. But my cycle, my period now isn't heavy, it's medium to light, and it literally lasts 4 or 5 days. And it's weird because I did hear about after you have a baby, like your periods get better, but I didn't know that it was a process to get better in terms of it being worse before it gets better, because your hormones still have to kick in. You know, you've just had a baby, you've grown a whole human being, you're breastfeeding, you are producing milk, right? Producing milk from your boobs. And even for that to kind of dry up, that takes a long time as well. That takes months for it to dry up completely. My milk didn't dry up for ages, like it wouldn't stop drying. And once I stopped feeding, that was it. Things just things got worse before it got better. But yeah, I just feel like most of the time, for most of my friends that did have jacked up periods beforehand, their periods tend to get better after. I can also now as well, like now that I've had my son, I can feel myself ovulating a lot more, as opposed to prior to having him. I didn't feel myself ovulating, and I don't feel like I was reaching my ovulation peak when I was testing before having him as well. Whereas now, everything is just so strong, and it's, you know, so extreme. So I love my son for everything that he is, but I love him even more now for just getting my periods where they need to be, which is regular, on time. They're a lot lighter. So yeah, I had no idea that this was even a thing, you know, that your periods get better. You hear about it, but I didn't know that it got worse before it got better if you're breastfeeding. So yeah, that's my experience and my story.